Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. In today's update, we're taking a closer and more analytical look at a statement that has been circulating within the dinar community, suggesting that Iraq's currency is effectively restricted by sanctions, making it unusable outside the country, and that the Central Bank of Iraq has little to no concern about dinar held beyond its borders. This is an important claim because it touches on core questions about currency legitimacy, international usability, and what it realistically means for those following or holding Iraqi dinar. To properly understand this, we need to break it down into several key components, starting with the concept of sanctions and how they relate to a country's currency. It is true that Iraq has historically faced international sanctions, particularly during the 1990s and early 2000s. During that time, Iraq's financial system was heavily restricted, and its currency had very limited recognition or usability outside its borders. However, the current financial landscape is significantly different. Iraq is no longer under the broad, comprehensive sanctions that once isolated its economy. Instead, the country operates within the global financial system, maintains diplomatic and economic relations with multiple nations, and engages in international trade, particularly in the oil sector. That said, even in the absence of broad sanctions, the Iraqi dinar is still considered a non-convertible or partially convertible currency in practical terms. This means it is not widely traded on global foreign exchange markets in the same way as major currencies like the US dollar, euro, or British pound. The reasons for this are not simply about sanctions, but rather about monetary policy choices, economic stability, and financial infrastructure. When people say the dinar is useless outside Iraq, that statement needs to be carefully clarified. The dinar does have limited usability internationally, but that does not mean it has no value. It is a sovereign currency issued and backed by Iraq's economy, and it functions fully within the country for all domestic transactions. However, outside Iraq, the demand for physical dinar is very low, and most international banks and exchange services do not actively deal in it. This creates the perception that it cannot be used abroad, when in reality, it is more accurate to say that it is not widely accepted or easily exchangeable internationally. Now, turning to the second part of the claim, that the Central Bank of Iraq does not care about dinar outside the country, this is also an oversimplification. Central banks primarily focus on domestic monetary stability, controlling inflation, maintaining currency value, and supporting economic growth within their own borders. In that sense, it is true that the Central Bank of Iraq prioritizes internal economic conditions over external holders of its currency. However, this does not mean that external dinar holdings are completely irrelevant. The reputation and stability of a currency, even internationally, can influence investor confidence, foreign investment, and trade relationships. The Central Bank of Iraq works to maintain a stable exchange rate, largely pegged to the US dollar, to ensure predictability in trade and financial transactions. This stability indirectly affects how the currency is perceived both inside and outside the country. It is also important to understand how currency exchange actually works. For a currency to be widely accepted internationally, it must have strong demand, high liquidity, and a stable financial system backing it. Iraq is still in the process of developing these aspects. While the country has made progress in rebuilding its economy and financial institutions, it is still considered an emerging market with structural challenges, including reliance on oil revenues, political dynamics, and ongoing economic reforms. In the short term, the implications of this situation are relatively straightforward. The Iraqi dinar is likely to remain primarily a domestic currency with limited international circulation for individuals outside Iraq. This means that converting dinar into other currencies may not always be easy or widely available. Exchange options can be limited, and rates may vary significantly depending on the institution or market conditions. In the long term, however, the picture becomes more nuanced. Iraq has been working on financial reforms aimed at modernizing its banking system, improving transparency, and integrating more fully into the global economy. These efforts include strengthening compliance with international financial standards, enhancing digital payment systems, and encouraging foreign investment. If these reforms continue successfully, they could gradually increase confidence in Iraq's financial system and, over time, improve the international standing of its currency. That said, it is crucial to separate realistic economic developments from speculative expectations. Currency value changes are typically driven by fundamental factors such as economic growth, trade balance, inflation, interest rates, and political stability. Sudden or dramatic revaluations without strong underlying economic justification are extremely rare in modern financial systems. Therefore, while improvements in Iraq's economy could support gradual changes in currency perception and usage, any expectations of rapid or guaranteed shifts should be approached with caution. Another important aspect to consider is the role of oil in Iraq's economy. Iraq is one of the world's major oil exporters, and oil revenues play a central role in government funding and foreign exchange reserves. These reserves, often held in US dollars, help the Central Bank of Iraq maintain exchange rate stability. However, this also means that the dinar's strength is closely tied to global oil prices and production levels. Diversifying the economy beyond oil remains a key long-term goal for Iraq, and progress in this area could contribute to a more resilient and potentially stronger currency over time. From a policy perspective, the Central Bank of Iraq's primary concern is maintaining internal stability rather than managing external demand for physical currency. This includes controlling inflation, ensuring liquidity in the banking system, and supporting economic activity. External holdings of dinar do not directly impact these goals unless they influence exchange rates or capital flows in a significant way. For viewers and followers of Iraqi Dinar updates, the key takeaway from this discussion is the importance of understanding the difference between domestic currency function and international currency usability. The dinar is fully functional within Iraq, but its limited global presence reflects broader economic and financial realities rather than a simple issue of sanctions or neglect. It is also important to approach information critically. Statements that simplify complex financial systems into absolute claims, such as a currency being completely useless or entirely ignored, often overlook the underlying economic mechanisms. A balanced perspective requires looking at both the limitations and the ongoing developments within Iraq's economy. As we move forward, keeping an eye on Iraq's financial reforms, banking sector improvements, and economic diversification efforts will be essential for understanding the future trajectory of the dinar. These factors, rather than speculation or assumptions, will ultimately determine how the currency evolves over time. At the same time, it is always wise to remain grounded in realistic expectations. Currency markets are influenced by a wide range of variables, and changes typically occur gradually as part of broader economic trends. Staying informed through credible sources and focusing on factual developments can help avoid misunderstandings and make more informed decisions. We will continue to monitor updates related to Iraq's economy, monetary policy, and financial system to provide you with accurate and responsible analysis. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay connected for more factual and balanced Iraqi dinar updates. And as always, this content is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.